business? You're going to want to hear this.
If you own a business, you need Next Insurance.
+, hello, how are you? Thank you for coming in. I appreciate you being here. Sorry I'm late, guys. It's been, I got up early this morning, and I got out and the garden. So weather is becoming really nice here, so a lot of my Monday lives is going to start being outside. Today would have been a good day for it, but it's somewhat of a disarray because, you know, I'm trying to do the orchard, and I wouldn't have been able to focus because my mind will be somewhere else. But I appreciate you guys coming in. Candy, thank you for coming in. Hello, how are you? Marlon Music Channel, hello, how are you? Melanie the moderator, hello. Thank you for coming in. I appreciate you guys. Give me 1 second. I just got to try to... we got some good information today, mainly for those who may be thinking about starting a garden. That green thumb thing, that's a myth. If you kill every house plant in your house, you still can be a gardener. The reason why you're killing it is because you need just a little bit more knowledge on how to care for it. So that green thumb thing, that don't matter. Anybody who got a brown thumb can have a green thumb. Trust and believe. But I thank you guys for being here. Today we're going to talk about fertilizer basics. Just the basics we're going to talk about, because I don't want to overwhelm the beginning gardener. So we're just going to do a little basics. Now, if we get a little bit more with the intermediate gardeners or the advanced gardeners, then we can get deep in it and have a whole nother conversation. But today we're going to touch on the basics, because a lot of people think that these plants will actually take care of themselves, and they won't. That's another big myth, that you ain't got to just set it and forget it. No. Can you think about it like this? These plants are a living thing. I just moved all my little plants. They're living things. You are a living being. Can I sit you in a corner and forget about you? Absolutely not. It is very important that you have water in your body. It's very important that you have food to survive, that you have air. We even need sunlight. With what's going on right now, a lot of us need to go out and take a walk, because that sun changes how we feel, it changes how we act, and we need that vitamin D. So it is a myth that you don't have to do nothing to your plants. But I don't want that to discourage people. I want it to actually encourage you. Because when you take care of something and you put a little bit into something, it also makes you give that self of accomplishment. And it also makes you feel that self of, you know what, I grew this, I did this, pride. And that's what you want to do. You want to be proud of your accomplishments. So, we're going to talk a little bit about nutrients. Now again, think of your plants, think of your garden as a living being, because your plants are alive. Regardless of what you think of them or not, they are alive, and you do have to care for them until they get up to a certain point and they start caring for themselves. So, today's topic is fertilizer. Before we get into that, I'm going to speak to a couple of people. I'm not going to be long today. I got a lot to do out in the garden, but I do want, because everybody is starting to get into the gardening, more people are gardening now than ever, and I want to be able to help you, if I can, make that project just a little bit easier. So let me say hello. Pandy, hello, how are you? Thank you for being here. Miss Green Thumb, always good to see you. Short Bus Pull Up, thank you for pulling up. I appreciate you. Glenn Jones, hello, how are you? Thank you for being here. Miss Farola, hello, thank you for being here. And let's see who else we have. Suzette Meeks, hello, how are you? Thank you for being here. I appreciate you guys. Lisa Williams, hello, how are you? I definitely appreciate you guys being here. Marianne, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. I think I pronounced your name correctly. I'm not sure. Candy Corner, I already spoke to you. 50 plus and Marlon the Music Channel. Now, if I'm gonna get into this. If you're new here, welcome. A lot of you guys are new to the channel. Welcome. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for coming over. A lot of you are beginner gardeners. That's coming from a couple of the gardening groups on Facebook. Welcome. I'm glad that you're here. I'm going to try to help you out as much as I can. I don't want you to feel overwhelmed at all with this process because it's a lot to take in. That's why we're going to do the basics, because the basics is going to get you through this gardening season. And then next year, when you want to do a little more, I'll go through it. But right now, we're going to listen to the basics. Fertilizers. Okay. The number one question is, what is NPK? NPK. A lot of us talk about it. We see it on bags of fertilizer. I should have brought a bag in here and I didn't. We see it on bags of fertilizer, but we don't know what it means. A lot of people talk about it on YouTube, but I've never heard too many people break down what what the N, the P, and the K stands for. But today, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. It's a very common question, too. The ingredients in the fertilizer is categorized in micronutrients and macronutrients. Okay? Don't let these words scare you. Just listen. Food Force Permaculture, hello. Thank you for coming in. I appreciate you being here. So, this is going to make a difference. The macronutrients and the micronutrients is going to make a difference in a great harvest or garden fail. You got to have those nutrients. Again, it's very important. Sometimes when we go to buy that bag of potting soil or that bag of potting mix for the garden, it already has nutrients in it. But depending on what you're growing for that season, because it could say last for 3 months. But depending on what you're growing for that season, you can lose all those nutrients in 2 months, and your garden will start to, your plants will start to suffer a little bit because they've taken up so many of that nutrient. So again, it depends on what you grow. It's going to require more nutrients to the soil. And you're going to be ready for that. Okay, so the micronutrients and the macronutrients make up the bulk of the nutrients in the fertilizer and refines the NPK ratio. Okay? What is NPK? The N, which is always at the beginning number of your fertilizer bag. I wish I would have brought a bag of fertilizer. Forgive me for that. But you always have 3 numbers. That first number is always going to be your nitrogen. That second number is always going to be your phosphorus. And that third number is going to be your potassium, which is your potash, okay? So we got nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Those are 3 important numbers in your bag of fertilizer, and I'm going to tell you what each of them need, because each of them plays a role. So when you go buy fertilizer, you'll know what type of fertilizer to get and what number to get. Sometimes you have 511, which is the fish emulsion is normally 511. 5 in nitrogen, one in potassium, one in phosphorus. Not in that order. So this is what you're going to know. Nitrogen is for your leaves. That's for that vegetative, that's for that growth, that green. If your plant is starting to look a little bit wilty and it's not the greenest thing going on, you might want to add a little nitrogen. Now, not in your starts, like this is a start. But you might want to add some nitrogen. Might be saying, I need a little nitrogen. It's like I need a little sun. I'm looking a little pale. That's what that nitrogen is for. Okay? Plants will use nitrogen to grow really pretty green leaves. Thank you so much, Short Bus Pull Up, for the super chat. I appreciate you. Thank you. I appreciate you. Nitrogen is going to grow really green leaves for you. And green leaves often represent a healthy plant. Louisiana Gardening Guru, hello, how are you? I think that was your tag in there. I'm trying to speak. If I don't speak, my mind is speaking to you. So that's pretty green leaves. That's where your nitrogen is coming from. So much will be needed as the season go forth. That's why a lot of us use the 511, because it actually helps keep that plant healthy and fed. Potassium. Phosphorus. That's that next number. Now what phosphorus do, that's for your flowers and fruit. That's what's going to bring that fruit out. You got a tomato plant. If you keep hitting them with just nitrogen, you're going to have the biggest green plant with no fruit that you ever seen. So you're going to have to get some phosphorus in there as well. That phosphorus is going to bring out the tomatoes. It's going to start developing that fruit. Same thing with your fruit trees. You can't just keep dumping that 511 on there, or you'll have a pretty tree and it'll grow. You'll have a pretty plant. It will grow, but it's not going to bear a lot of fruit. And I'm going to tell you something that's going to stop and block. You also can block some nutrients with too much nitrogen. So you want to make sure on certain things you have either a well-balanced fertilizer or a different ratio in your fertilizer. So again, the phosphorus is going to give you fruit roots, and it's going to strengthen your roots to your plant so that it can produce strong roots, a strong plant, and good fruit for you. Now the potassium, the potash, to me the potash also is for root development. Okay? So it's important that some of our plants get potash, but if you notice in a lot of the fertilizer, that potash number is always a little bit lower than your nitrogen number. You're never going to see it where it's actually higher than the nitrogen. So on some of them, you'll get that middle number to be higher, which is your phosphorus, will be higher, but your potash will be a little bit lower. So the next time you get a bag of fertilizer, you can pay a little bit closer attention. So remember that middle number is never going to change around in terms of in what order. It's always going to be NPK. That middle number is actually going to help with fruiting. Now, you don't have to have a big number, because you're not going to see a real big number in it. Unless it's all well balanced, mean 10, 10, 10, 13, 13, 13. All the numbers are the same. Okay? So remember that the middle number is to help with your fruiting. That last number, which is the potash, that's going to feed your plant, and it's going to also help that your plant to fight. When I say fight off diseases. And yes, Your fertilizer will help your plant fight off diseases, different diseases. Because the stronger it is, the better it will fight off. Think about us as humans. They say we get more vitamin C if we eat more of this to get our omega acids in us, or our the different nutrients that we need. It will help to fight colds. Vitamin C will help fight colds. Vitamin D will help fight colds. This will help with your vision. It's the same thing with your plant. It will help fight off some of the battles that it will have as far as diseases that may be out in your garden or to that plant. So that number can be important too. Don't need a lot. Now let's go back to the part where I said with your nitrogen. Too much nitrogen, that plant absorbs too much nitrogen, guess what? It'll lock up and it won't absorb other things like your phosphorus and your potassium. It won't take it up because it's too much nitrogen and you just lock the plant up. So a lot of times, again, don't keep putting nitrogen on your plant. Now, we have a natural source of nitrogen as well. I think I've seen Food Forest Permaculture in here. He'll tell you, and I think he would agree, nitrogen can come from the air. When it rains, it's nitrogen in the rain. Wait a minute, backyard gardener, you tripping. No, let me explain. You ever notice that one day your grass is brown and light green and not deep, and then it rains? And then all of a sudden, your grass is super green, and you be like, that rainwater really does good on my plants and on my grass. That's because there's natural nitrogen inside that rainwater that's causing your grass to green up or causing your plants to perk up and the leaves to turn real pretty. In the springtime, we get all that May rain and April showers. Guess what? All of that nitrogen is just making the grass pretty. It's not so much the water, but it's the nitrogen in the water that's coming out of the air. So that's another fact about nitrogen. So sometimes you don't need all of that nitrogen. You can go ahead and, get a lower number on the nitrogen and a little higher number on the phosphorus, which is going to be your fruit. So when your plant get to a certain stage, you want to stop all that green growth, and you want to start getting some you want to be able to get fruit development on your plant. So remember that as far as your plants go. Let's see if I got everything. It also, phosphorus will also help you fight off diseases and pests because it gives a pheromone off on the plant that some pests don't like. Like, what's this? I don't like that. So that's another thing about potash, which is that last number. It helps to fight diseases and it helps fight off pests in your plant. So it's just basic what we're talking about in terms of what your plant will need. We can get more into it deeper because you have different types of fertilizer. We're not going to discuss the different types in detail, but you have natural fertilizers, and then you have synthetic fertilizers, which is, more chemicalized. But with all of them, it should be some type of numbers on there to determine what the ratio is. A lot of people do not like to use chemical fertilizer, and that's fine. I'm one who don't like to use chemical fertilizer in my vegetable garden. But I will use chemical. All right, sorry about that. I blinked out. Let me see who else is in here. because I do not want to miss anyone, and I want to make sure that I'm able to answer any questions. I don't think I see any questions. I think everybody is basically to everyone. Food Forest is in here. And How to Garden, hello, how are you? Thank you for coming in. I appreciate you being here. So again, people, this is just your basics. A lot of people talk about NPK, but they don't tell you what the N and the P and the K does for your garden. Now you know what the N, what the P, and what the K does for your garden. For me, when on my fruit trees, I like Fish Emotion, Fish Fertilizer, the 511 as a additive, because I can use that natural fertilizer every week to freshen up my plant. But I have to use my fruit and nut fertilizer and fertilize my plant a little bit more. And I normally use the Joe brand. So that's a slow release. When you have a granular fertilizer, it's normally a slow release, meaning that it's not just going to dump all these nutrients on your plant at one time, but it will, in fact, slowly release it out into your plants, which is a good thing. So you might say, well, I need it to green up a little bit. I don't want it to slow release. That's when you will use your liquid feed. You also have different types of compost teas that a lot of people use, which is great for the garden. You can go out there one day and pour some compost tea into your garden, and boy, oh boy, you come back 2 days later, that plant then shot up. So these are things that are good for your garden. And if you don't know about compost tea, it's different ways to make it. Some people use the weeds in their garden and put them in a bucket of rainwater and let them sit a couple of days. Some people get compost and put it in a strainer bag and put it in a bucket of water. The reason why they use rainwater, excuse me, instead of tap water, and if you use tap water, you probably want to let that sit for 24 to 48 hours so that it can get all of the chlorine out of there. Because if your pH is off on the water that you use, you also can have a problem with, again, locking the nutrients up in your garden where it's not taking up any nutrients. I don't care how much you put on there, it just won't receive it. Now, what do I do if that happens? If that happens, there's one or two things that you can do, try to do, and one is called flushing, which is just get that plant, put it up on something, and just keep watering it, try to flush all of that out, flush all of them nutrients, because you got too much going on in there. A lot of times, if you look at, I don't know how many people garden with the terracotta pots, and you look at the terracotta pot and you see a whole lot of crust or a whole lot of white residue around the pot. A lot of that is nutrients that leached into the terracotta pot or that holds. I don't use terracotta pots in my garden for many reasons, and one of them is because of what it does with the nutrients factor. So let me see who else is here. Carolina Gardner, hello, how are you? Thank you so much for coming in. Martine Brachot, thank you for being here. I don't see you. I saw your icon up there, so I know you're here somewhere. And yep, there you go, right there. So a lot of times we have to flush our plants to give it a fresh start, because you keep putting nutrients on top of nutrients on top of nutrients on top of nutrients, it'll lock that plant up. Oh, and then another thing, when you are feeding your plant, if you have a plant that's in a container and you have a tray up under the bottom and that extra water is just sitting at the bottom of that tray, You might want to not put that tray under there because that's old nutrients that's sitting right there, and it will wick if you got potting mix. It will wick back up into the plant. So you have to be careful of how much you put in there. I think with the fish fertilizer, I think it's like a cap per gallon of water. So it's also important to read how much fertilizer you should be putting. If it's a liquid feed, how much of that liquid? How many caps per gallon of water? You can make a 5-gallon bucket. If it's a tablespoon per gallon, that's 5 tablespoons over in that bucket. And make sure you mix it up. With my liquid feed, I normally don't like to let that fertilizer sit a couple of days and go back later. But if you do have it and you have it sitting, make sure you shake that stuff up really good. I'll use a milk jug, or I'll use a iced tea Arizona pitcher, which are thicker and really good because the milk jugs today are so thin and flimsy. But a nice Arizona iced tea pitcher, and I'll put a gallon of water in that, and I'll shake it up real good. If I'm going through the yard and I got big plants that I got to take care of, get you a 5-gallon bucket. Again, if it's a tablespoon per gallon, put your 5 tablespoons over in there and get that 5-gallon bucket filled up with water and mix it up good. You can take you a big cup, or you can, if you got the strength to lift it up, and you can water feed your plants like that as well. With greens, leafy greens, you don't really have to worry about the potassium, or, well, you don't have to worry about the potassium as much because those are leafy greens, so you want that nitrogen because it's not a fruiting green. It's just, your kale, your collards, stuff like that will take a lot of nitrogen. Even sometimes your beans. Certain plants give off nitrogen. Like your beans will give off nitrogen into the soil. So you might not have to use all of that. With the liquid feed, I normally do that in the beginning stage of my watermelon patch to get my greens nice and healthy. But before I start any type of gardening and putting my starts down in my garden beds, I always amend my soil with blood meal and bone meal to get that nitrogen and potassium in there. And I mix it up in that soil real good, and then I'll put my starts down in there. And I've never had a problem with them burning roots or any of that because it's supposed to be all organic. And that's one of the benefits of working with organic fertilizer. It actually gives you the ability to not burn your plant. Some of the synthetic fertilizer, it will burn your plant up if you make a mistake and not apply that fertilizer the correct way. So it's very important to read the instructions on the back so that you will know how to fertilize your plant correctly. So for me, a beginner gardener, I would probably recommend you go with an organic fertilizer, and then you don't really have to worry about your plant burning. And the Fish Emotion is an organic fertilizer. The fish and seaweed fertilizer, that is organic because that's basically fish poop or seaweeds that came out of, where they extracted them from the ocean, and that will give you a nice organic fertilizer. The same thing with Job's blood meal and bone meal. It's supposed to be organic, and they do have a lot of organic fertilizers, liquid and granular, on the market. So it's not like you're just forced to go with a synthetic chemicalized fertilizer. You can't go organic. You just have to do your research. And while doing that research, also do a little research on why people prefer organic to why people prefer synthetic, and it's a whole conversation. It's a whole conversation of it. So make sure you do your research. So again, when you go out and buy this potting mix for your garden, some of it already has fertilizer in it. It'll have some compost material in it. It'll have your what is the white stuff that we perlite in it, or so it's nice and loose. But potting soil does not have too much perlite in it, but it will have some nutrients to get your garden going with the potting soil. But again, remember I told you last week, them bags of potting soil is heavy. I like potting mix because for two reasons. It the moisture, it retains the moisture good, and it's not holding that water. It's light for me to pick up, and it's better for my plants. If you're growing figs, you definitely want to use potting mix opposed to potting soil. Now, if you just want to buy potting soil, it's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Pick up your bag of perlite with that so you can loosen that soil up a little bit, because you don't want your soil to be too compacted. You want it to be well draining so that you don't have a problem. Let me see what's going on in the chat. Okay. Let's see. I think everything is going on good in the chat. I don't think I saw any questions. So that's all I got for you today, folks. Basic fertilizer. Lead Farmer 73, hello, how are you? Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate you. Thank you. And guys, everybody that gave me those super chats last week, I appreciate you. I got to show you what I did with those super chats, and it went right into the garden. So I'll be doing a video soon and releasing that information. Ali Oakley, hello. I think I pronounced your name right. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Suffix Susie, hello. How are you? Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Guys, I appreciate everybody that's coming into the live stream. And everybody who have subscribed over to the channel. I definitely appreciate you guys. I just want to make sure that you're not intimidated by gardening. A lot of people saying it's intimidating. It's too much work. Whenever have you not worked and got something out of it? You don't work, you don't eat. That's a saying. And it's a very true saying. You got to get out there and put a little work. I'm not going to say that it's not laborious. It is. But it's a good feeling when you get through at the end of the day. Just like going to work. You go to work, you work hard, you come home, you get your check at the end of the week, you can feed your family. That's a good feeling to be able to do that. And it's the same thing in the garden. So it's a stress reliever. If you're gardening and it's stressful for you, something not right. Something is not right. So you want to make sure that you enjoy what you're doing, because if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to stick with it. Don't get discouraged because a plant died here or a plant died there. It happens. The best mistakes, your failures are your best mistakes. The best mistakes are the ones that you learn from. If you don't make mistakes, you're not going to know what you did right or wrong. You'll think, okay. And it's okay to keep a garden journal. Actually, I keep a journal. That's one of the reasons why I started YouTube, to keep a garden journal. Now it's a little bit more. It's a little bit more, but definitely it shouldn't be stressful. It should be an enjoyable thing. Don't think too much into it. To the beginning gardeners, I had one person tell me they're a beginning gardener and they have a lot of area in their yard and they want to grow all this stuff. Now understand, the more you grow, the more work you got to do. So if you're a beginner, don't overwhelm yourself with doing too much at one time. If you want to start off with your herbs and maybe your salad garden where you're doing your tomatoes, your lettuce, your cucumbers, that's fine. And then in the next season, you be like, okay, I did pretty good. I'm going to add on. Because everything that I have in my garden, and a lot of people on here that's gardeners, they'll tell you they didn't do that in one season, one setting. It accumulated over time. So don't look at somebody else's garden and be like, oh, I want to grow all of this stuff if you're not familiar with it. Because at this point, I look at other people's gardens and get recommendations on what or ideas on what I want to grow for that next season. I got a lot of ideas from Dan Food Permaculture channel. Some things that I've never grown before. That I wanted to put into my garden and I wanted to try it out. So these are things that you got to keep in mind. The more you grow, the more you have to attend. And make sure you put those garden beds, because see, it's time for a lot of people have already started. But in Michigan, it's time for a lot of people to get out there in the garden and start gardening. If you got some cool crops, your lettuce and your brassicas, those should be getting sold sometime this week. Your plant start should already have been starting. If you haven't started your tomatoes and peppers, let's get them going. Let's get them going. It's not too late, but the longer you wait, the longer you're going to be before harvest time. And you don't want that cold, because you know we only got a certain amount of time in Michigan. So I need you to keep all of that in mind while you're growing. I wrote notes to my YouTube. Don't start tomatoes too early. Yes, don't start tomatoes too early. But don't start them too late either. Because if you start them too early, you'll wind up having these big plants and then you don't have nowhere to put them. It's not enough time. Like right now, I'm about to start my plants into the hardening off stage. I got a grow tent full of stuff. I'm thinking maybe I'll take you over to look in it while we're live right here. Let's see. And then we're going to wind up ending the live. So let me try and show you what I have going on in the grow tent, if I can get y'all off this tripod without dropping you. Backyard Garden Science, hello, how are you? Thank you for coming. I appreciate you being here. Welcome. Jordan, hello. I love those beds you got, Jordan, your garden beds. Last week we talked about the different benefits from growing your garden in a raised bed post to growing your garden in just the flat ground. It does kind of work with you a little bit and give you a sense. So let me take you off the tripod. Bear with me. I'm be covering up with my big old hand. And let me try to show you. Let me try to flip the camera. How about that? All right. We're going to flip this camera. First thing I want to show you is this fig plant that I did have in the my grow tent. And this thing is producing figs like crazy. This is, I believe, my Chicago Hardy. And you notice how, look at my finger. Look how thick that stalk is. And that's in my grow tent. Take you over to my grow tent. Hold on one second, guys. And I'll show you what I got going on in here. All right. Ooh, it's hot in here. Also got figs in here. If you look back here, see that big one right there? And there's a couple more all in here. Over here, these are all my plant starts. These are tomatoes, they're peppers, they're cucumbers, Um, most of my greens are not in here, but there are different varieties of tomatoes. I keep a fan. Remember I told you about that fan? That fan, when you're growing in grow tents, it will actually make your plant a lot stronger. Thank you, Pandy, for coming. I appreciate you. It'll make your plant, that little movement will give you a good, strong stem. Let me show you something else. Give me a sec. 1 second. And then we're going to end the stream. All right. All right. Over here, I got broccoli, lemon balm, onions, eggplant, a little bit of everything over here. These are my starts. Some is extra because I'm growing for other people too. And then the kitchen is a whole nother story in the kitchen. New Orleans Gardener, hello, how are you? Thank you for coming in. So that's what I got, guys. We're going to end it on that note. I appreciate each and every one of you, all my new subscribers. Thank you for coming in. I appreciate you. And let's get out there and grow something. Happy gardening, everybody.